Good morning. This is Alyssa with Awaken Authenticity, and this morning I am interviewing Jenny Cohen, who, if you're a dancer, you might know as Aaliyah Jenny. And I wanted to talk to her today about her experiences living in America as a child of immigrants, as well as her experience going through cancer and just her experience of being her wonderful self. So good morning and welcome.
Morning. It is such a pleasure to be here this morning.
Yay. I'm glad you're here. We're both drinking our tea and it's a good little morning. So I wanted to start out for those of the viewers who aren't familiar with you, can you give us a little bit of a heads up and description about who you are and how you show up in the world, the kinds of things that you do and that sort of thing?
Oh goodness. Okay. Well, besides being a leader to many animals of who you will hear in the background, my apologies. We have 3 dogs of various sizes and 5 cats, and it's feeding time, as my daughter's doing in the corner. So my apologies with that. I'm the alpha leader. Lots of animals. I really believe animals are great for pet therapy. And if you find one that really resonates with you, I've always been of the philosophy to just not second guess it. If the animal chooses you, then you welcome it home, and that's what we've done. We've had many animals choose us.
Aw, I love it. And you foster animals too, right?
We foster a lot of kitties for my kids to learn responsibility, also for us to remind ourselves of other people or beings of need in the world. And I think that's really important. It also teaches us about loss. I was always shielded as a child from death. Anytime family members died, my parents wouldn't tell me about it. So
Oh, wow.
they had read in my horoscope that it was bad luck for me to go to funerals.
Wow.
So they wouldn't tell me. Like my grandfather passed, they had the funeral. I didn't know about it. I was in college.
Wow.
To me, to begin with, I mean, he wasn't super excited when I was born because I was a girl. And we always had a weird love-hate relationship. He respected me towards the end. But yeah, he got really sick and I just didn't know about it. And then he died. And so I do the fostering so that when we say goodbye to them, we learn. I teach my children and myself a little bit of what loss is.
Right.
A milder version of it. In no way am I, of course, equating that. It is. There's great sadness when we have to say goodbye to these babies we've bonded with, who have bonded with us. And
yeah.
That happens with Fair Frequency. We've done, I see since we lived here, we've done maybe about 8 or 9 litters.
Wow.
And the babies that are given to us are bottle feeders. Bottle into their mouths, and then they start opening their eyes, that kind of a thing. So in the dance world, I'm known as Aaliyah Jenny. I'm quite excited to say that I have recently come into knowledge and acceptance of my own worth as a performer, so that I am now saying I'm a dancer and I'm a performer, versus it used to be like, oh, well, I do this on the side because, I primarily identify as a mom of twins and a wife to a wonderful husband. We're going to celebrate our 25th year anniversary. I mean, I've known him over 30 years. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
And I'm almost 50. So definitely known him more than half of my lifetime, Melissa.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So they've always been the forefront of a lot of my energy. And I've always felt so pulled between, I want to be a performer and a dancer and travel. But my family needs me and my husband needs me, because I am really very much of an anchor for my family.
Yeah.
And I think all women are, whether or not you want to acknowledge it. It's very important. We're like the center focus. And my husband's the center focus too, so I don't want to negate his contributions. But he, I don't want to sound like, it's very important, the mother is like the central figure in the household. But that's just the decision that I made, because my husband had cancer, testicular cancer. And
Boy, your household.
yeah, we've been handling a lot of challenges. So my husband had testicular cancer 3 years after we were married.
Wow.
And we were lucky he had the kind that there was a cure for.
Hmm.
So after 2 months of therapy, afterwards he looked like a concentration survivor. It was horrible, but he was bad and determined to go back to work. And 3 years after that, we went through IVF to get pregnant. And then in vitro. And because the workup found that I had severe endometriosis, and I had like a chocolate-sized cyst on one of my ovaries. So I had to get this whole workup done before they could even do IVF or insemination, any of that kind of stuff. We were lucky on the first trial, we got our twins.
Wow. Yeah, that is lucky. That's awesome.
There are miracle babies. They didn't ask to be born. So because of that, that's why they've always been the forefront. It's never been any hesitation if I had to choose between a dance thing or my family. It was always my family, especially when they were little.
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss moments. And they were homeschooled too. So if mommy wasn't home, they didn't get school done.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, I know having known you through the dance community and seen your life through Facebook, I'm aware that you have children who are also very talented dancers themselves, performers themselves. Because how old are they now?
They will be 19 in
Awesome.
December.
Yeah. So I've seen that, but from my perspective, I've only seen you as the lone Aaliyah Jenny who's out there in the world performing, doing amazing things herself. And so, and to know that you're doing as much as you're doing, as well as you're doing it on the side, is it really impressive. I mean, your life at home must just be that much more impressive. And I've seen little bits of that on Facebook, but it's cool to realize that the people that we interact with in dance situations, they have the rest of their lives to talk about.
Well, I laugh when people post about how busy their lives are. I go, ha 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 ha. If people had any clue, they think they have a clue. They go, oh, Jenny, you're traveling here and you're traveling there. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so here's the thing. During my cancer treatment back in 2014, I wasn't traveling that much. People thought they saw me a lot, is only because I was good with posting pictures of events when I went.
Yeah.
But I like to spread the joy of the event. If I really like an event, I really want to promote it. I want to because it's so much work, you guys. It really is. There's so much lone wolf behind the scenes stuff that's being done that people don't know. We're up until all hours of nights, getting all the last minute details that you don't even think, oh my God, really? You have to schedule, what you pack out every day when you leave the house? Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I really didn't actually start traveling a lot until during my cancer treatment. I did it more to give a break to my family.
Aww.
my sick face, because it's here I went from this vibrant mommy can do all person, and all of a sudden, I was going from chemo to chemo and just sitting on the sofa. And also there's something very healing about the dance community.
Definitely.
And yeah, what I'm talking about. If you surround yourself, and I'm not talking about knowing people, I'm saying just to be in a dance class with people dancing, the energy generated, you can feel it. It's a palpable force.
Yeah, it's visceral.
It really is visceral. And for me to be bathed in it during my chemotherapy was very healing for me.
Awesome.
I found it really important. Plus, it also gave my family a break. But that was the time I started really traveling a lot, Alyssa. And from this point forward, next year I'm traveling a little bit less because I'm hoping more people will hire me. I had a nice little life coach discussion with Lisa Zahia, and she was kind of like Jenny.
Awesome. Lisa Zahia is incredible. Shout out to Lisa.
Yep. She was like, Jenny, it's time. It's time you are seen more as a teacher and less as just just a person who spends money going to all these places.
Right, right. Well, I totally agree. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you that has a connection to being authentic is that throughout your chemo and cancer experience, you were performing regularly on the dance circuit, and it was something that was extremely cathartic for the people in the audience and backstage to see you presenting yourself in a very vulnerable, sometimes broken and sometimes triumphant way. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how it is possible, or what your experience has been surrounding the idea of presenting yourself vulnerably without having the people who are your audience feel like you're bleeding all over them. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yes, I do a whole workshop on that. It's called What's Your Story?
Oh, great. Tell us a little bit of that.
The bottom line is, first of all, it's hard for me. So this is all very subjective opinion. Okay, let's clarify that, because it's not fact. It's just my life experience and all my performances. For me, I've always felt that I can perform themes that are more autobiographical, that have to do with my life, and then I extrapolate them out so that it becomes more of a universal thing. That's all my focus when I perform. Okay, so like my very first solo was called Release, and it was about my son being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 10. So he's insulin dependent. He could die in his sleep. Basically, 9% of people do.
Wow.
They don't make it to a certain age. Yeah. That was about my piece. Even I can draw upon that well of the anger and the frustration and the hopelessness, and that's what that piece was about. That's something that I think is universal. We've all felt that. We've all felt trapped.
Right.
We've all felt being eaten alive by hopelessness. Basically, that piece is about. You asked me, how can I do a piece without bleeding on the stage? Unfortunately, I can be honest, I think that's the only one piece that I bleed out on the stage. I literally have a cathartic. I can't perform that piece anymore because I'm exhausted at the end of it. I have to dive deep in. But my other pieces talk about, like, my cancer experience, being pulled between my life, my worlds. Yeah. I always think about not using, I think it's the awareness of not wanting the audience to be your therapist.
That's interesting.
It's not, if people go, oh, I'm just expressing myself, I need to tell my story. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying, but the audience, be very aware of the fact still that the audience is there to go on the ride with you. Yeah. The audience is not just there to be an observer.
And to support.
And just to give you energy, because there has to be exchange of energy. And I'm not the first, and I won't be the last to talk about this. It's not a new thing, yeah? But there is an energy exchange between you and the audience. And part of it is that we also talk a lot about, you might prepare a piece, especially in solos. You might say, I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here, I'm going to do this, and do this combination. There has to be built in a certain amount of improvisation, because that's where you get the energy from the audience, so you can give the audience what the audience needs that day.
I love that. So it's a very interactive experience for you.
It has to be. It has to be, because otherwise, there are some performers who are exquisite. However, when they walk off the stage, the audience members actually feel exhausted.
Yeah. Right.
You know what we're talking about. There are these just, oh my God, and they just hammer, and they are like up here in terms of technique and professionalism and but there wasn't any giving to the audience of energy.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. And for people who are watching who are not performers, I want to make sure that this information is still translatable to their lives. And one thing that I'm seeing or thinking that is like a really solid way to conflate performance is to think about social media, just like how we present ourselves on social media.
Let's be honest. You perform when you walk out the door.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. How you drive your car, that is energy output out to the world.
Yeah.
Right? I tell my children, you step out of the house, okay, this is, some of you may hate me for this. I don't care, because that's just the way I raise my kids. Because my kids are half white and half Asian, right? But people mostly see them as minority. They walk out, I tell them, bring out the whiteness in you. And they're like, what's that, Mom? I'm like, look at your dad. Well, what he does. And there's a privilege that he exerts that we're all still trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
An expectation that he walks out to be treated a certain way. We're all, I mean, I'm Asian, and it's very in my culture to be differential in all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm also almost too American in my persona, which is I walk out and my chest is open. I am receptive. I am willing to share of myself. That is part of my performance.
Yeah.
That is part of my presentation. People always say to me, Jenny, you go to these events and you're always this welcoming soul. And I'm thinking, yeah, because I don't care if you're the headliner or you're a person who paid money to come and take classes and no one knows your name. I want to learn your name. I'm sure you have this interesting story that you have to share with me.
Right.
And that's how I am when I walk down the street.
So I thought it was interesting when you just said that story. You said, I'm, in my Asian culture, the culture is to be deferential, and I'm almost too American. You didn't say I'm very American. You said too. Like, what is too American about being open and receptive?
My mom can't understand why. She can't
Okay.
understand why I have put my cancer story out on Facebook under Jenny's Transformation. That's too American. Asians don't talk about their illnesses. It's a taboo.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I'm diving into the nitty gritty that I want to get into here, because this is not only about sharing vulnerable information, but also sharing it despite expectations of family or culture. This is gold. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be honest. I started Jenny's Transformation because at the time.
Tell us what Jenny's Transformation is.
Jenny's Transformation is something I started on Facebook. It's a community page that tells from the very first week I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of like gives a lot of the nitty gritty of my day-to-day. Every one of my chemo treatments, I posted a picture. I post some real feelings there about how I'm feeling. I don't do that on Facebook because Facebook is about kittens and inspirational quotes. Because even like, and I'm sorry for some of my friends who might be hurt by this, I've had to unfollow certain people because I go on Facebook to keep track of all of my friends. And if you post a lot of my life is miserable, this sucks and that sucks and this sucks and da-da-da-da-da, after a while it gets me down. Yeah. And I have to be like, okay, I'm going to unfollow you for a week and then I'll come back and make sure that you're okay. Yeah. But but then it drags me down a hole that I don't necessarily want to go down. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so Jenny's Transformation is that's what it was set up to do. And even now I still will post because there's some residual nerve damage, and I still have treatment that I'm doing that affects my well-being, and so I post about that, even though it's what are we 3 years now post. People, I actually had someone, oh God, who shall remain nameless. I was at an event and I was checking someone in I was volunteering and I was checking people at the door, and there was one woman, I knew her on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I know you, I'm sorry, I have chemo brain. I know your face, but you're all dressed up on your Facebook picture, and here you are, in classroom persona. And she went, "Oh, you're not over that yet." And I went, "Oh,
I'm still so in it."
I'm still so in it, you guys. Just because my chemo's done doesn't mean that you don't have residual cancer. You still have 6 months checkups.
Oh my God.
I have moderate to severe nerve damage, which means I can't feel my feet. I can't feel my hands. I can burn. I drop things. I dropped a cup of hot water on a person next to me in the airplane because I wasn't paying attention. You know, I broke my toe during chemo walking down the hallway, and I just banged the corner of a fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this kind of stuff. I think people forget that just because I don't talk about it doesn't mean that I'm not suffering still.
Yeah, right.
You know, and a lot of cancer people. That's why Jenny's transformation was there for the people who want information. At the time I started it, I had a little over 1,000 friends on Facebook, and also other friends who weren't on Facebook. And I didn't want to tell every single person individually, hey, I was just diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
Because people have such different ideas of what that is. Fellow survivors are kind of like, oh shit, I'm so sorry to welcome you to the club. That's basically what we say. And then there's a whole spectrum, you know, of people who are just like, oh my God, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna be fine. And then the people who look at me like I'm dying, like I'm dead. They look at me like I have a death sentence. And I'm like, and then the spectrum of everybody in between.
Yeah.
You know, when people find out, basically, that's what it is. And I really I want to avoid that.
Yeah, well, and I found,
you know, go to Jenny's Transformation and read up on it. And that's how that's.
And I found that Jenny's transformation was really educational because you were open about things. One thing that I thought was particularly, you know, I mean, you just have a really good ability to bring your light and airy self even into the darkest of situations, which I think helps other people who don't necessarily understand what's going on to see what you're going through without feeling like they're being overwhelmed. So for instance, one of the things that Jenny did was you had this like you had like a countdown or a count up of how many chemo treatments you had. And so like every time you were in the hospital for another treatment, you had that, and the numbers were changing as you were going through the experience. And, you know, your face sometimes was like really exhausted, and sometimes it was like, I'm here, oh boy, you know, and there was just a variety, but just having that colorful counting thing was like a way for people who don't necessarily have an experience themselves or with people that they love. It gave them a window that was accessible. Like we all know counting from Sesame Street and everything else. And that was just like a really simple way to kind of like bring other people into your experience in an accessible way.
Yeah. For me, it was a survival thing.
Yeah.
You know, chemotherapy was just, it's a crazy thing to sit there and willingly let them pump poison into your body.
Yeah.
For a number of hours. You know what I mean? And to do that 16 times.
Right.
It's mind-boggling. It's bizarre. It's surreal. It's surreal to sit there and feel it coursing through your body. I can't even. And then afterwards, I got a port, so that's what this scar is here, and it's just like an you know, this thing underneath your skin that just sits there for a year. You feel like the Borg. We joke that we're part of the Borg nation. You know, when I did radiation, and they had to literally, you know, the radiation is so strong, the rays. I had to put sunblock on my back.
Wow.
And there's risk of me having like bone density problems in my spine because of it. You know?
Wow.
At the end of it, they let you hit this gong. I have a picture of me. I think I posted it. I bought the whole facility, lays and a blow up gigantic phallic palm tree. I take a picture of me gonging with this palm tree, and I laid myself. And that was the thought that I kept in front of my head after every one, because I had 25 radiations.
Oh my God.
No,
that's exhausting.
I had to be radiated 25 times. But that was like the thing that kept me going. I'm gonna do a picture of me with the freaking palm tree gonging instead of lying here. And the radiation was weird because it wasn't painful. It was just in there, and these machines would be roaring over you. I put some pictures on that thing too. And you wouldn't feel anything, and then the next day your skin would start to burn. And then there were older people that had a reaction, and they looked like they had severe 3rd and 4th degree burns, and they still were in the middle treatment.
Wow.
Because they were older. So anyways, the I would dress up in wigs. You know, Halloween for chemo, I was in a monkey suit. I mean, the older people that looked at me like I was insane. I didn't care because I had to change the brevity of it, because the reality was that there were people who weren't going to make it through the chemo in the waiting room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it's sort of like you were giving yourself the job of like bringing light to the people around you, because though, you know, at those times you weren't able to go to performances necessarily, and that's an opportunity for you to bring your light somewhere.
Yeah, here's the thing though. There's a person that had a breast cancer scare, and she went overboard, and she wore like pink everywhere she went, and she wore like a pink tutu. It became a caricature.
Yeah.
And that I guess I want to clarify. I was still understated and quiet and respectful to those of the people who were mourning
Mm-hmm.
their treatment,
Mm-hmm.
because I need to hold a space for those people.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. I wasn't a caricature in spite of my wanting to be who I was.
Yeah.
You know, for my own personal treatment, I couldn't take it that seriously, because then I would become mired in it.
Right.
But there were people around me who needed to be mired. That was part of their process, and I held space for that. And I left those. I didn't try and go up to him and be like, "Hey, cheer up," because
Right.
I knew what that felt like for someone to do that to me.
Right.
Who had no clue of the seriousness of my situation.
Right.
Does that make sense? So we have to make sure that that's explicitly understood. You need to be your authentic self, but you also need to hold space for other people where what you're doing might not resonate with them, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I really love that. So, and that reminds me of something that you had mentioned about that you wanted to make sure that we talked about, and that is setting boundaries. And one of the things that the way that you phrased it was setting loving boundaries. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the difference between setting boundaries and setting loving boundaries.
Okay. You know how there's some people that you meet and they're very closed off?
Yeah.
They're like this. It's palpable. You can feel a wall in front of them because they're in protective mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can make eye contact, but it feels like they're going boom.
Yeah.
We all know people like that. Those are setting boundaries. Or someone who you might have a conversation with, and they're just kind of like, no, this is not my way, you know, or you're going to do it my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are situations where it's important to be like that.
Yeah.
You know, if someone's attacking you or being inappropriate, it is absolutely important to put up those boundaries. my child's head. Hey, Ari. Doing work behind us. Doing 3D animation. Look at her really powerful computer.
Cool.
Sorry, guys. And but then those are extreme situations, I feel.
Yeah.
Versus loving boundaries. You know, if you get into like a political discussion with someone, we have vastly different opposing views. Yeah, unless there's someone who is card-carrying NRA and they are in an altercation with you and you're fearing for your life, in which case, yes, a hard boundary is absolutely important. But most of the people I know who own a gun are actually very responsible, overly responsible, and overly educated that I personally met, okay? Most of the time, there has to be a way to set a boundary, understanding that it's okay to have differing point of view and life experience, which is the really important thing.
Yeah.
Some people know what it's like to be an immigrant.
Yeah.
But they can know what it's like to be a minority. And so I say this specifically They can know what it's like to be like the only man in a room of lots of women, or
Mhm.
the only woman in the room of lots of men. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think it's possible to meet some people in the middle ground. We're all human.
Yeah.
That's really important. How can I set a boundary with someone and lovingly be like, hey, yes, we can agree to disagree. I have unfriended people on Facebook. I'm so sorry if you're watching this and we're not friends anymore. I wish you really, really best of luck with your life, but we're not going to mesh on certain things. Does that make sense?
Right. And so how do you make, talk a little bit about having navigated that space as a child of immigrants, as someone with Asian heritage, as someone who's also a woman, and that sort of thing? I mean, there's lots of social, cultural, familial expectations and differences in this culture, and how I mean, I imagine that when you were growing up, maybe these boundaries were not so easy to navigate. How did you come to the conclusions that you've come to, and were there any sort of like um situations that kind of like were aha moments, or I don't know?
Oh God. I grew up. That's a good question. See, I've made a lot of mistakes in my. I used to work at a hospital setting where there was this one guy that he must have found out that I made a little bit more money than him. He hated me. He did everything he could to sabotage me. And what I found was that um, I played into all of his games. I never learned, and that was before I had kids.
Hmm.
I would always somehow he would lay these booby traps, and I would walk into every one of them. So, and even now I think back over it, that what I should have done with him, I should have just laughed it off, because I think that would have been the best weapon,
Hmm.
and I was working closely with him in the department, so I couldn't necessarily ignore him,
Right.
because he also had knowledge. We were working in the cardiac unit,
Hmm.
and but I should have just laughed him off and just not let him get to me. That's one of the boundaries that I could have done,
Mm-hmm.
and looked at him as someone who was very unhappy in his life because he wasn't a very happy person.
Yeah.
But instead, I allowed him into my psyche, and I let him make my life literally miserable. That was before.
I mean, I think that's a really good point. Like, most of the time when someone is frustrating you or antagonizing you in some way, it's usually a reflection on them. It's usually not about you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good reminder. There have been a lot of times where uh, I've gotten into boundary settings with people. I have what's known as the perfect face that I put on when I'm really mad at you, but because I'm Asian, I can't necessarily give myself permission to show anger.
Let's see
But
the perfect face.
oh, you have to get me pissed. Let me think. Face. A lot of Asians have that face. Actually, a lot of people have that face. You know what I'm saying? It's not just Asians. A lot of people wear, it's a little mask that we put on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I end up putting on that face because I don't want to fuel the flames of what's happening. Because if I openly show anger, that's going to have the other person be way more explosive because they're reacting to my anger. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so I'm doing it to diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to engage.
Yep.
You can't change someone when they're angry.
Yeah.
You know that, right, viewer? If I'm angry,
Smile and nod.
right? If I was pissed and really, really, and I got my perfect face on, you ain't gonna change my mind. Yeah. I'm just going to back away from you slowly, right? Versus someone who might not have their perfect face on. They might be really angry and they're going to want to attack you. You need to deflect and let them calm down.
I love that. That's
Deflect.
like such a good reminder that like setting your boundaries and standing up for yourself doesn't always mean engage.
Yeah, yeah, because it. We've done a lot of that. I taught my kids to just deflect and walk
Yeah.
off. And sometimes there are people who don't even know that they're challenging, and they're just making conversation with you. And
Yeah.
it's not worth it. It's not worth it unless they show you. How do they show you? Is if you go, oh, well, my experience is different. And their reaction is like, oh, really? How is it different? Versus, oh, well, that's not possible. That's different. You are wrong. I mean, there have been plenty of conversations I've had with people like that, in which case you're just kind of like, okay, perfect face. I guess we're going to change the topic and move on to something else because you're not receptive to my point of view.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So all of this is reminding me of something that you said earlier when you were talking about performing, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of wrapped that loose end in my own thought process up. So when you were talking about performing, you were saying that like it sounded like one of the things that you do when we were talking about like not bleeding on everybody is recognizing that you have a particular story, figuring out what the main feeling that you have in that story is, and then recognizing that that base experience of suffering or fear or loneliness or whatever is something that everybody experiences. And so even if your particular story is not the same as anybody else that you're talking to on Facebook, social media, or like performing for in the audience or whatever, those are things that are shared. And if you like are able to focus on that rather than your particular brand of poor me, you're more likely to connect rather than turn people away. That's how I understood that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you want to extrapolate it to real life, we all draw on a well of experiences. And if you extrapolate from those experiences into just the feelings of like a human being, we all share the same feelings of fear and hope and love and hopelessness and joy. You know, we all share that. What the receptacle, what the experience in which we share it with might be different, but the feelings are all the same. And I think it is possible to connect with people on those levels. You know, just even walking around the store, and there are days I don't make eye contact, but for the most part, most days I do make eye contact. But I also then find that in doing so, you open yourself up to other people's feelings. And so it is possible to be like, hey, eye contact person, have a nice day, and not take on the energy with you.
I like that. Good points. So do you have any dance workshops coming up that we can tell our audience about?
I'm going to be teaching at East Coast Classic in Virginia in January, and I'll be doing a hip hop fusion workshop. Sorry about that, dog. You be quiet. And I am available for any workshops on using the video camera in your phone has your own coaching. That's called Mirror Mirror. I'm available for that, and also the What's Your Story workshop. I do have a DVD coming out.
Oh, it's exciting. That's exciting.
It's an authenticity DVD about how to do performances based on real stories. So.
Cool. Very cool. Excellent. And then I wanted to thank you on this, in your busy life, on this early morning time. Thank you for spending time with us and joining us.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa.
Yeah, it's a pleasure spending time with you and talking with you more. And then finally, is there anything, if someone felt particularly closed off or didn't understand who they were at their core, or was frustrated or stuck in their life and they were ready to like break free and figure all of that stuff out, is there any bit of advice you would give that person?
Try something new.
Try something new.
If you've never done art classes, do that paint night thing. If you've never done dance classes ever, go take a dance class, whether it's a fitness dance class or like a simple adult-only ballet class. Learn a new language. Go take acting classes. Break out of your comfort zone, and that might jostle how you see yourself. Because if you're in the same mode, there's a lot of books I've been reading lately about you are who and what you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to break out of what you are now, find something new to redefine yourself with.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Be courageous.
I mean, but sometimes, it's you're courageous just doing your everyday life, and people know that, but be willing to try something new.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's going to a new place to shop. Go to another store, because sometimes, that one store you go to all the time, you may bump into somebody that you know in another store.
Yeah. I love these suggestions. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
I'll say goodbye, but we'll talk soon. Bye.